questions. Mr. Shaheen, you had mentioned the economic impact that auto racing has in the United States. Could you repeat what that number is?
In North Carolina alone, it's a $6.2 billion a year industry, which is a significant number.
6.2?
Yes.
Just in North Carolina?
Yes, sir. $6.2 billion a year industry. I live in Mooresville, North Carolina, which is called Race City, USA. The majority of the industry in and around our area right there is all racing related, whether it's NASCAR Sprint Cup teams all the way down to teams competing in Supercross. There's sports car racers, IndyCar racers, drag racers, they're all there. It's not just those people, but the cottage industries that have sprung up around that. People that supply not just the pieces and parts and components that make the cars not only go faster, but more efficiently and quicker and safer, but also the people that work in public relations industries, media like Speed Sport. You have marketing firms that just deal specifically with motorsports. There's even a gentleman in Concord, North Carolina, a neighboring city by the name of Sam Bass, who started his career with a passion for motorsports as a young kid who just liked to draw race cars. He has turned that into a thriving business that not only paints pictures of cars, but designs paint schemes and the uniforms that the crews and the drivers wear, and he has a thriving business out of that. So there's a huge cottage industry that makes up that massive $6.2 billion.
And as a race fan, I know that NASCAR is the icon of our motorsports here in the United States, and it's a significant part of Americana, from catchphrases such as boogity, boogity, boogity to the checkered flag to the ancillary businesses such as clothing and souvenirs. A race is a cultural experience, and as you look at those that have become our best known drivers, those that you hear about all the time, from your testimony, I understand these guys just did not walk in one day and become a NASCAR driver. They worked themselves up through the ranks.
That is exactly correct.
And those ranks are the industry that would be directly impacted by this legislation or by this EPA rule. Am I correct?
That's correct. And for example, let's take the Pettys, the first family of American motorsports, if you will, beginning with Lee Petty through King Richard Petty, his son Kyle Petty, and then on to Adam Petty, his son. Of those four generations, three of them all utilized production vehicles that were modified for racing that allowed them to have the opportunity to grow. Another gentleman out in Roseville, California, Bill McAnally, if you want to take it down a step or two just to show how it impacts all the way across the board. Bill began racing in 1986 at the age of 21 years old in a street stock division in a 1970 Chevelle that was modified from production to street to racetrack use only. Bill is now 50 years old, owns Bill McAnally Racing, and has two teams competing in NASCAR's K&N West Division and two teams competing in NASCAR's K&N East Division. He employs 43 people. He has won multiple championships. He's one of the leaders in NASCAR's competition on the regional level. And he has started careers for numerous individuals that have moved on into NASCAR's top divisions, whether it's as crew chiefs, crew members, or drivers. So there's another career that never would have happened if this legislation had been passed.
And thank you. And Mr. Kirsting, I have a question.
Chairman Loudermilk, I just wanted to point out that in addition to that ladder effect for professional racing, there is a vast amount of sportsman racing going on out there in the country every day. Every year, we got a ton of people out there enjoying the sportsman categories, and those guys and women are generally driving converted vehicles.
And I've had the opportunity at Atlanta Motor Speedway to go in the drivers' meeting and do their devotion before the race and meet with the drivers. They're impressive. But Mr. Kirsting, I'd like to ask you a question. How did your organization, the Special Equipment Marketing Association, learn about the EPA's proposed decision to enforce the Clean Air Act on non-road vehicles for competition?
Well, as you would expect, SEMA, as an organization representing manufacturers and distributors in this category, we maintain offices here in Washington, D.C. to monitor for proposed regulations, proposed legislation. And I'd point out that most of the race sanctioning bodies have the same. The vehicle manufacturers are represented here in a similar fashion, and ordinarily, the Federal Register, which is the document that alerts us to new proposed regulations, is very plain in representing what the new regulations pertain to, and that is the public notice portion of our regulatory process. And in this case, not only did SEMA not find that regulation when it was initially proposed, not a single stakeholder that we're aware of identified that regulation. And the reason was that it was tucked into a proposed regulation on medium and heavy-duty greenhouse gas emissions, and it didn't bear a heading in terms of its chapter in the table of contents that would indicate that race cars were being regulated. Basically, it was under a section for other provisions. So there's really no easy way to find it. Our staff found it in December. This rule was introduced in July through kind of an indirect reason, and thankfully we found it. So it is unusual that a regulation that would have such far-reaching effect would be tucked away like that. And, you know, I mentioned that SEMA has a good working relationship with regulatory officials at EPA, at the California Air Resources Board. We work with them regularly. And so it was quite a surprise to us that this approach to solving the problem that EPA perceives was the approach used, and that we weren't informed about it at all.
And when you found it, I understand it was after the comment period had closed.
That's correct. So that regulation had an official comment period. Fortunately, the agency has latitude to continue to accept comments, and I think under the circumstances, they accepted our comment, and it is a part of the docket.
So the EPA has offered the provision that we're discussing here today for public comment. Did the agency include any justification or analysis when it reopened this issue for comment?
Not that I'm aware of.
In your testimony, you discussed the impact on ancillary sales as a result of the EPA's rule. Would you please describe the impact in a little more detail?
So as an organization, SEMA represents manufacturers who have sales in the range of about $32 billion a year. For us to isolate just racing sales was something that we were able to do in preparation for the hearing here. But for us to be able to really look at the related sales, we would need a little bit more time. And we'd be happy to provide this subcommittee further information as we have the opportunity to collect it. But what we're talking about here is that if Ralph takes his race vehicle to the track on Saturday, he's going to be towing that vehicle with a truck. There's going to be a trailer. There's going to be a whole range of equipment that is sold in connection with that truck and trailer, all sales that make up part of that $32 billion industry that we represent. Not to mention all the ancillary support services, the folks who are there to take care of that vehicle, to work on it, provide services for it, and so forth. So,
Who's your tires?
yes, and really, you're talking about a lot of local race prep shops that get a lot of business through these sportsman category activities, and we just didn't have the time to pull that kind of information together, but it's in the billions and substantial.
All right. My time has exceeded its limit. At this point, I recognize our ranking member, my good friend, Mr. Byer, from